I really thought tonight might change something. I wore that soft green blouse, the one Leon used to say made my eyes look like spring, and I spritzed on the perfume he once called intoxicating. We had plans to see a movie, grab dinner, and maybe, just maybe, feel like us again. On a whim, I suggested we stop by the old bar, the one from our college days. The moment we walked in, it hit me. That smell of worn wood and bourbon, like time hadn't touched it. Leon looked around and chuckled, and I felt something flutter in my chest, something that almost felt like hope. We slipped into our usual booth, the one by the jukebox that never worked right. It was surreal, like stepping into a memory with the edges still soft and golden. We talked about the past, those messy, beautiful years filled with ramen noodles and secondhand furniture. Leon leaned in close, just like he used to, and for a second, I saw the boy who once made me laugh until I cried. We even ordered the same drinks we used to, his bourbon neat, my gin with a twist. And when he reached across the table to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, my heart, well, it almost believed in us again. The bar buzzed around us, strangers laughing, glasses clinking, the low hum of music playing something familiar. I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in months, we weren't just coexisting, we were connecting. Leon told a story from our sophomore year, the one about the broken air conditioner and the heat wave, and I laughed, genuinely laughed. It felt like breathing again after being underwater for too long, and just when I thought maybe we were finding our way back, something shifted. It started so small, just a folded piece of paper slipped onto our table by the waitress. I thought it was the check at first, but Leon picked it up too quickly, too casually. His eyes scanned the note, and then he chuckled. That sound, soft, smug, made something in my stomach tighten. I leaned forward instinctively, trying to read it, but he angled it away from me with a half smile. Nothing, he said, tucking it under his glass. But by then, my hands were already reaching for it, faster than my mind could stop them. He didn't stop me. That was the strangest part. He just looked at me, still smiling, like he was amused by my reaction. The paper was warm from his fingers. The handwriting was neat, almost careful. Feminine, confident. I miss those nights. Maybe tonight we can create another memory. My breath caught. My throat burned. I blinked once, twice, trying to make the words change into something innocent. But they didn't. I looked up, and his eyes darted away, toward the back of the bar. So I turned, slowly, my heart beat loud in my ears. And there she was, sitting alone, drink in hand, eyes locked on us like she belonged there. Her lips curled into the kind of smile that wasn't kind at all. The kind that says you already lost, and I already know it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood up calmly, my pulse thundering in my chest. Leon reached for my wrist, but I didn't let him touch me. I walked across that bar like I had every right to. Because I did. I had every right to demand the truth, even if it shattered whatever was left of us. Each step toward her felt like walking through water. Thick, heavy, intentional. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. She tilted her head, as if curious about what I might say, as if this was a game she'd already won. And I think that's what made me even calmer. I wasn't there to scream or make a scene. I was there because something inside me needed to see her, to see him, through clearer eyes. The way you stare at a painting from far away for too long, until you finally step close enough to notice the cracks. Behind me, I could feel Leon's energy shift. He stayed at the booth, watching, unsure. Maybe he thought I'd back down. Maybe he thought I'd just let it go, like I had so many other things. But I didn't. I stood right in front of her, close enough to smell her floral perfume, sweet and too familiar. Her eyes sparkled, a little victory already dancing in them. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to pretend. That told me everything I needed to know about her, and about what kind of man Leon still was. I didn't say a word yet. I just looked at her, looked back at Leon, then down at the crumpled note still clutched in my hand. The bartender moved behind us, wiping the counter, glancing our way, sensing the shift in the air. The night had changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It wasn't about healing. It had become something else, something colder, sharper. And as I stood there, caught between the woman at the table and the man who brought me here, I knew this night wouldn't end the way I once hoped. She didn't look surprised to see me standing in front of her. If anything, she looked entertained, like this was the show she'd been waiting for all night. I opened my mouth, not even sure what would come out, but my voice found its way. Do you always go after taken men, or is tonight just a special occasion? It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Her smile didn't waver. She took a slow sip of her drink and then looked up at me, calm as anything. If he's answering me, she said, maybe he's not as taken as you think. The words hit like a slap I never saw coming. I should have walked away. I should have thrown my drink or stormed out or screamed, anything but stand there. But I was frozen, locked in that awful in-between where anger and heartbreak twist together and make you question your own reality. She leaned back, satisfied, like she'd just won a round in a game I didn't even agree to play. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I felt Leon's presence behind me. The way he hovered, hesitant, guilty. And then he spoke. Clara, he said, his voice low, almost like he was trying to soothe a child. Don't do this. You're overreacting. It's nothing. 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 The word rang in my ears like an insult. He didn't look angry. He didn't look ashamed. He looked inconvenienced, as if my pain was the real problem here, not the woman he'd clearly invited back into our lives. I didn't even glance at him. I just stared at the woman still seated at the table, watching this unfold like a performance meant for her enjoyment. She smiled wider when he spoke. Like his words were proof she still mattered, that she still had some power over him. Maybe she did. Maybe more than I ever wanted to admit. I felt something in me unraveling, slow and quiet, like thread being pulled from the hem of something once beautiful. I turned to him, finally, and our eyes met. But I didn't recognize what I saw there. It wasn't love. It wasn't even guilt. It was discomfort, annoyance, like my reaction was a bigger betrayal than her note. Wow, I said, and my own voice sounded foreign in my ears, distant, flat. So, this is how far we've fallen. He tried to speak again, some half-formed excuse already crawling up his throat, but I shook my head. I didn't want his words. I didn't want another bandage over another lie. Behind him, someone at the bar laughed too loudly, glasses clinked, and the world kept turning, as if my heart hadn't just been shoved off a ledge. He reached for me, like that gesture could fix anything. I stepped back. You stay, I said, barely above a whisper. That's your choice, but you don't get both of us. I didn't wait for his reply. There was nothing left for me in that booth, that bar, that moment. And as I walked past him, past the bartender, past the table where we once carved our initials into the wood, I didn't look back. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight, it's to leave before they realize what they've truly lost. Outside, the air hit my face like a wake-up call. Sharp, cold, real. I hadn't even realized how stifling it felt inside until I stepped out. My hands were shaking, not from the chill, but from everything I'd just held in. The note was still in my pocket, crumpled but whole, like some awful souvenir from the moment I stopped being blind. A couple passed me on the sidewalk, laughing, brushing against each other with that easy kind of closeness I used to have. I envied them, just for a second, for not knowing betrayal was waiting behind a smile. I walked without direction, like movement itself might ease the ache. Each step felt both heavy and weightless, like I was floating just above the ground, detached from the life I had minutes ago. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Not yet. Not while my heart was still trying to understand how we went from laughing in a booth to unraveling in front of strangers. I thought about calling someone, my sister maybe, but I couldn't find the words. What do you even say when the person you trusted most chooses someone else? When I finally stopped, I was 3 blocks from the bar, standing beneath a street lamp that flickered like it couldn't decide whether to shine or fade, just like us. And in that silence, I made a quiet decision. Not out of anger, but from something deeper. A shift, a breaking open. This wasn't just about a note, or a woman from the past. It was about who Leon became when no one was watching. And worse, who I became when I kept forgiving him. I don't remember deciding to go back inside. I just found myself walking, steady and deliberate, right through the door of that bar again. The noise hit me like a wave, but I moved through it like it wasn't even there. They were still in the same place. Leon standing awkwardly near the table and her, sitting, smug, like she was expecting an encore. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to her, stopped just short of her seat, and let my voice cut through the hum of conversation. Do you always go after taken men, or is tonight special? A few heads turned. Conversations paused, but I didn't care. I wasn't putting on a show. I was reclaiming something. She didn't even blink. She leaned back, crossed her legs slowly, and tilted her head like I'd just told her something amusing. If he's answering me, she said, maybe he's not as taken as you think. I stared at her hard. I wanted to hate her. But what I felt wasn't rage. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you realize someone can only steal what's already been offered. Leon stepped forward like he was going to fix things. His hand grazed my arm and I pulled away. Clara, don't do this, he said, voice low and tight. You're overreacting. It's nothing. There it was again. Nothing. The word that men like him use when they want you to doubt your own eyes. My jaw clenched. I could feel every person in that bar holding their breath, waiting to see what I'd do. But I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just looked at the man who once promised me forever, and saw a stranger. He kept talking, trying to control the narrative, his voice calm, but his eyes flickering with panic. You're making this into a thing it's not, he said. She just sent a note, that's all. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it was, the way he minimized it. As if the betrayal only counted if it ended in a hotel room. As if intention meant nothing. As if watching me break in real time was somehow less than what he was afraid to admit. He wanted me to let it go, but I couldn't. Because it wasn't just about that note. It was about the erosion. The quiet, consistent crumbling of everything I thought we were. The missed calls, the distant dinners, the way he stopped reaching for my hand without even realizing it. And now, this woman, his past, showing up like some ghost I was never warned about. Except she wasn't a ghost. She was very much alive, very much present, and Leon, he hadn't told her to leave. He hadn't told her he was taken. That told me everything. She watched us like it was a matinee, eyes dancing, lips curled. And I wondered briefly if she felt any guilt at all, or if she was just another woman clinging to the belief that being chosen meant she had won. But I wasn't going to compete. I wasn't going to stand there and beg for scraps of dignity from a man who tossed it aside so easily. I breathed in, steady. Then I did the one thing neither of them expected. I turned. And I walked away, head high, heart breaking, spine straight. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last, like my body knew what my mind hadn't dared admit until now. That this wasn't just a bad night. It was the night that peeled back everything I'd been pretending not to see. Behind me, I could hear nothing. Not Leon calling after me. Not the woman's voice. Just silence. A deep, echoing silence that somehow said more than any apology ever could. No footsteps followed. No one ran. No one fought for me. I pushed open the bar door and stepped into the night for the second time, but this time felt different. I wasn't lost anymore. I was stripped bare, yes, but in that rawness, something fierce stirred. I could feel the cold settling into my bones, the kind of cold that reminds you you're alive. My heart ached, my pride stung, and yet there was a strange power in not looking back. In leaving him there to explain himself to a woman who already knew exactly what kind of man he was. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not there. The world outside felt indifferent. Cars drove past, music played from somewhere down the street, life just kept going. And I realized, in that moment, so would I. But this version of me? She wouldn't forget what that room taught her, what they taught her, and she wouldn't forgive as easily next time, if there even was a next time. The days after weren't loud. They didn't come with slammed doors or explosive fights. They came with silence, thick, suffocating, and absolute. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even ask where he'd been the night after the bar. I just stopped filling the space between us. I moved through the house like a ghost in my own story, brushing past him in the hallway, answering only what was necessary. And Leon? He didn't apologize. He just started acting like it had never happened. He'd say things like, "Want anything from the store?" Or, "Don't forget your mom's birthday is coming up," as if the foundation of our marriage hadn't just cracked open beneath us. I watched him try to pretend, clinging to routines like they could fix what he'd broken. I could feel his discomfort growing with each passing day of my quiet. He wasn't used to it. He was used to me fixing things, smoothing things over, being the emotional glue that held us together. But this time, I let the cracks show. Then came the shift. His tone changed. His patience thinned. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped one morning, slamming a coffee mug into the sink. "It was just a note, Clara. Are you seriously going to throw everything away over that?" I didn't answer. I didn't flinch. I just kept folding laundry, one shirt after another, like his outburst hadn't even touched me. But inside, something had clicked. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was the way he watched me bleed and called it a paper cut. He started throwing words like darts, dramatic, jealous, insecure. The kind of words meant to sting, to twist the blame until I couldn't tell who started the fire. But I saw through them. For the first time in our marriage, I saw him clearly. Not as the man I built a life with, but as the man who couldn't stand not being adored, who mistook silence for surrender, who needed to be the victim in a story he wrote with his own hands. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped softening my edges to protect his comfort. Every morning I'd wake up and move through the motions, coffee, dishes, work calls, groceries. But inside, something was rebuilding, something stronger, quieter. I began noticing the parts of life I had lost in trying to preserve us. The books I stopped reading, the songs I loved but muted, the way I used to laugh without checking his face first. It was like slowly returning to a version of me I had shelved somewhere, tucked away between compromise and keeping the peace. Leon felt it too. He started asking if I was okay, not because he cared, but because he could sense I wasn't his anymore. That the pull he used to have was slipping. That my silence wasn't passive. It was active, purposeful, heavy with decisions I hadn't spoken yet. He tried to bait me with fights, with guilt, with, "I've been trying, haven't I?" But I just nodded, smiled, walked away, and that scared him more than any screaming match ever could. It's strange, the way clarity comes. Not like a lightning strike, but like morning light slowly bleeding through curtains. One afternoon, I caught my reflection folding towels. Same motion, same quiet, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked calm, yes, but not numb, not broken, just done. And there was power in that, in the stillness, in the knowing. I hadn't made a scene, hadn't begged, hadn't thrown a single thing. And still, everything was changing. He noticed. He watched me more carefully now, like I was a glass he knew he'd already cracked, waiting to see when I'd finally shatter. But I wasn't going to break. I was going to leave. And that terrified him in a way my anger never had, because silence gives no warning, no roadmap, no chance to prepare. He didn't know what day I'd walk out, or how, or if I already had in all the ways that counted. And that uncertainty? That was his consequence. For so long, I thought staying made me strong. That holding on, fixing, forgiving, those were the marks of a good woman, a good wife. But now, I saw strength in letting go, in choosing myself, in standing in the middle of our kitchen, hearing him call me crazy, and not even blinking. Because deep down, I wasn't losing my mind, I was reclaiming it. And I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the next chapter of my life wouldn't include him. The morning I left didn't look any different than the ones before it. The sky was soft and gray, the coffee pot gurgled like usual, and Leon was still asleep, snoring lightly, face turned toward the wall. I moved carefully, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted this moment to be mine, fully mine. I folded one sweater, then another, placing them neatly in a small suitcase I hadn't used in years. No dramatic packing spree, no mess, just quiet, thoughtful decisions, the same kind he never knew I was capable of making. I didn't take everything, just the things that mattered. A few clothes, my grandmother's necklace, the book I never finished because life kept getting in the way. I moved around our bedroom like a stranger in someone else's life. Each item I chose felt like a thread I was pulling from a tapestry we'd pretended was whole. I glanced at Leon once. He shifted but didn't wake. And I didn't feel sad. Not anymore, just light. Hollow, maybe, but light. In the kitchen, I left the note by the coffee maker, right where he'd see it. Not tucked in a drawer. Not hidden in a place he'd find a week too late. I wanted him to read it the way I read her note. Clear, undeniable, with nothing left to guess. I believed in us, even when you didn't deserve it. I won't make that mistake again. I took off my ring, held it for one last breath, then set it gently beside the paper. Not as a threat, not as a message, just a final quiet punctuation. I opened the door slowly, letting the morning air brush across my skin like a reminder. This was real. This was now. The neighborhood was still asleep, the world unaware that someone was quietly rewriting the story of her life. No suitcase in the trunk, just one bag beside me in the passenger seat. I didn't need more. What I needed couldn't be packed. Peace, clarity, the pieces of myself I'd lost and was finally brave enough to collect. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, both hands resting still, heart steady. There was no playlist, no dramatic soundtrack. Just the hum of the engine and the quiet rhythm of my breath as I backed out of the driveway we once called home. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I'd already done the grieving. In the silences, in the folding of towels, in the 1,000 tiny moments, I realized I was alone beside someone who never really chose me. I wasn't running away. I was walking toward myself. Finally. As the house faded in the rearview mirror, so did the weight I'd been carrying, the doubt, the self-blame, the ache of waiting for someone to become the man he once promised to be. I thought about all the nights I stayed, the ones I convinced myself were worth salvaging, and how none of them compared to this single morning of letting go. It didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom. The kind that whispers, "You made it out." The kind that leaves no need for revenge, only release. I don't know where I'm going yet. And strangely, that doesn't scare me. For the first time in years, the unknown feels like possibility instead of threat. There's something beautiful about starting over with nothing but your name and your truth. I pulled into a diner off the highway, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window watching the world pass, fast, indifferent, alive. The waitress smiled without asking questions. It was the first kindness I'd received in weeks without strings attached. Somewhere, Leon is waking up to an empty space beside him, reaching for a routine that no longer includes me. Maybe he'll read the note and feel something. Maybe he won't. But that part's no longer mine to carry. He made his choice. In that bar, in that silence, in every moment he refused to see me breaking. And now I've made mine. Not to punish. Not to prove anything. Just to honor the woman I became the minute I stopped begging to be chosen. My goodbye wasn't loud. It didn't shatter glass or scorch the earth. It didn't come with threats or final screams. It came in quiet steps, a written truth, and the soft closing of a door. And in that silence, I found everything he couldn't give me: peace, clarity, and the strength to begin again. Because in the end, The real revenge wasn't making him hurt. It was letting him realize too late that he lost the one woman who would have stayed, if only he had chosen her.